The first thing I heard was a violent metal rattle, the kind that means someone isn't knocking, they're forcing their way in. My stomach tightened before I even stepped outside. Something was wrong. Bad wrong. I pushed open the door and froze. A full HOA swarm was pressed against my gate like a mob. Clipboards raised. Phones recording. Badges shining in the sun like they thought they were cops. Gravel snapped under their feet as they shoved against the fence, testing it, shaking it, trying to see how much force it would take to break through. And standing front and center was their president, chest inflated, jaw tight, fingers stabbing the air at me like he was issuing a warrant. He barked, "Open this gate. You're blocking community access." Community access. To my land. My driveway. My home. Then I spotted the worst part, a roll of measuring tape stretched across my fence. Hands gripping the chain. Phones inches from my face. They weren't confused. They weren't lost. They were mapping, recording, and pushing like they owned the place. The president leaned in with a smirk that made my blood heat. "You're required to let us in. We'll conduct the inspection ourselves." Inspection? Violations? On land they have zero authority over. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was a test, a pressure push, a deliberate attempt to see if they could break me before I pushed back. And staring at their hands wrapped around my gate, feeling the metal tremble under their grip, something inside me locked into place. This wasn't an inspection. This was an invasion. And they had absolutely no idea who they just provoked. Everything detonated right there. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. I've always kept my gate closed. Not locked, just closed because it marks the line between my peace and their world. My land. My rules. But the HOA never cared about lines. It started with notes under the chain, polite at first, then demanding. Reconsider the visual impact. Your gate disrupts neighborhood flow. Flow of what? Their joggers. Their golf carts. Their obsession with control. Then came the watchers. I'd walk out and catch them standing too close to my fence, staring at the hinges like detectives building a case. One afternoon, I heard a camera click. Another day, I saw 3 of them whispering, pointing, measuring. That's when the feeling changed. This wasn't curiosity. It wasn't concern. It was preparation. And the pressure wasn't just building, it was coming straight from my gate. It happened on a quiet afternoon, the kind where the only sound should have been the wind in the trees. Instead, I stepped outside to find a full HOA parade lined up at my gate, clipboards out, badges flashing, little smirks like they were about to stage a takeover. Their president stepped forward, adjusting his badge like he thought it made him law enforcement. "We're here for a community inspection," he announced. I almost laughed. "My land," I said. "My rules. You don't inspect anything here." But the smiles dropped instantly. He told me I was required to open the gate. Required to let them walk my driveway. Required to let them check for compliance issues. Compliance with what? Paint charts. Lawn height rules. This land wasn't under their reach, and they knew it. When I refused, everything shifted. Pens clicked. Phones came up. Gravel crunched as they stepped closer like a slow, practiced push. Suddenly I was uncooperative. Unsafe. A threat to neighborhood standards. All because I wouldn't unlock a gate they had no right to touch. Someone pressed a measuring tape against the fence. Another snapped a picture of my face. That's when it hit me. They weren't asking anymore. They were testing how far they could go. The next few days felt like watching a storm form right over my land, slow at first, then darker every hour. Every morning, another bright violation notice was taped to my gate. Red stamps. Fake case numbers. Threats stacked on threats. All based on HOA rules that never applied to me, written like they thought repetition could rewrite the law. Then the gathering started. Clusters of HOA members showed up with clipboards, cameras, and that smug look people get when they think they're in charge. They photographed everything, the fence hinges, the gravel, even the dirt packed under the gate, like they were hunting for evidence of a crime I hadn't committed. And every time I stepped inside, even for a minute, I'd hear it. Rattle. Metal shaking. Someone testing the gate. Pushing the chain. Trying to see how far it would give. They weren't inspecting. They were scouting. The lies spread even faster. Flyers stuffed into my mailbox claimed I was blocking emergency access and endangering the community. They held a full board meeting about forced compliance, talking like they had the power to order anything they wanted on my land. Then I heard the rumor, whispered by a neighbor who looked terrified to even tell me. They're planning to remove the gate. Not ask. Not notify. Just take it down. That's when it clicked. This wasn't HOA annoyance anymore. This wasn't passive pressure. This was a coordinated incursion, and they were rehearsing a takeover in plain sight. I knew I couldn't wait for them to make their move. If the HOA wanted a showdown at my gate, I was going to choose the battlefield. I pulled every document I owned, deeds, survey maps, easement records, and spread them across my kitchen table like ammunition. Every boundary line was highlighted. Every county stamp was visible. Every page said the same thing, loud and clear. This land is mine, legally, permanently, undeniably. So when the HOA came back, they brought backup, a contractor with a bright vest, a forced smile, and a clipboard ready to inspect the perimeter. The kind of man who expected me to step aside. Instead, I stepped out holding the deed binder like a brick and called county officials right in front of them. The shift was immediate. The contractor opened his clipboard, then closed it again when he saw the documents. His smile faded. His eyes dropped to the boundary lines. He took one slow step back, the kind people take when they realize they've been dragged into something they shouldn't touch. The HOA president tried to recover, tossing out excuses, insisting it was routine, claiming they had jurisdiction misunderstandings. But every sentence died as the county officer flipped through my paperwork, raised an eyebrow, and asked one simple question. Who told you this land was yours to inspect? Silence. Real silence. The kind that digs in. The contractor refused to touch my gate. The volunteers behind the president began shifting, whispering, backing away. Their entire show of authority cracked right there on the gravel. For the first time, they were the ones scrambling. I wasn't just holding my ground. I was exposing them, and they knew it. They came to take control. And walked straight into their own humiliation. The ruling didn't take long, but it landed like a hammer. The county officials stood in the driveway, flipping through my deeds, my surveys, my maps, and the HOA's smug confidence faded with every page turned. When the officer finally looked up, his voice was sharp enough to cut gravel. This land is private. Completely. Your HOA has zero jurisdiction. The president's face tightened. A volunteer actually stepped back. Another stopped taking notes altogether. And then came the consequences. Formal warnings. Violations. A written order to remove every notice they'd slapped onto my gate. They were cited for harassment, attempted trespassing, and misusing authority they never had in the first place. The fines hit like body blows, each one a reminder that they had crossed into a world that wasn't theirs. I watched them peel their fake warnings off my gate. Watched their volunteers drag their own signs back across the property line. Their whole plan, the one they thought would intimidate me, crumbled right there in front of the county. And for the first time in weeks, the driveway felt quiet again. The gate hung steady. The air felt clean. I stood there, hand on the metal, breathing freely, finally. The land. The boundaries. The peace. All mine. They came here thinking they could take authority. All they did was prove exactly who owns this ground. The moment the officials drove away, the farm exhaled with me. I walked the gravel driveway, hand brushing the gate, feeling it swing smooth and solid. Dust from the posts settled like a mark of victory. Every boundary was clear. Every inch of land unmistakably mine. Signs ripped down, barriers removed, false warnings shredded, the evidence of their failed power lay scattered across the property like trophies of justice. Even the neighbors stopped to watch, whispering as they saw the farm reclaimed, the balance finally restored. I stepped through the fields. The wind tugged at my jacket, the sun warming my back, and I could feel the tension leaving my shoulders, like it had been held there for months. The driveway no longer felt like a battlefield. The gate no longer a line to defend. This was peace, hard-earned, solid, undeniable. The HOA had tried to push, to threaten, to claim what wasn't theirs. They had failed. Every move, every notice, every whispered threat had only proven one thing: I stood my ground, and this land wouldn't bend. This farm is mine, untouchable, unyielding, and proven.